Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thank you for those who have joined. Welcome to Put Your Words into Action, Writing the Proposal webinar. After we had a really good session with Go Ahead and Submit that speaker proposal webinar, this is a great follow-up session to that. With that said, all women and identity webinars are recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. So we will share this when it is live. If you didn't get the chance to check out the last one, you can, and this one as well. To start off, all attendees will be prompted to please be muted, cameras are off, and just make sure that, you know, when you do need to speak, that you raise your, you can click on kind of making sure that, you know, you have a question and get a little bit more engaged. You can raise that bar. And we do want you to be interactive in the chat. So if you can, please introduce yourself and have your question out there. Would really like to welcome that. Understand that this is going to be more of an interactive session. So please engage as much as you possibly can. If you have any questions following up from the session today, then please feel free to email us on info@womenInidentity.org. With that said, I will allow now Debbie Mack to kick us off. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Razia. So thank you everybody for joining. I think Razia shared a little bit of what I was going to talk about, so this has been great. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the agenda. So we're going to do some introductions. You'll get to know who Lorrayne and Heather are, and then we'll talk a little bit about sort of building on what was in the first presentation, which is talking about a little bit more tips and tricks for what you should see or what you should put into a presentation that is going to get you the most, hopefully, the most opportunity to get them accepted by conference teams. And then Heather is going to talk a little bit about additional tips, sort of knowing your audience, how you should tailor for that. And then we will go into breakout. So what we're hoping and what we have asked is if you are coming with ideas in mind for an upcoming conference, in particular Identiverse or European Identity Conference, etc. If you already have something that you're working on and you would like a couple more eyes on it, that's what we're here to do. If you just have an idea and are thinking about doing something but don't have anything formal yet, this is also a great opportunity for you to engage with some of your peers and then get some advice from some of our presenters. So with that, I'd like to introduce Heather. Actually, welcome Heather and ask her to introduce herself.
Sure. So my name is Heather Flanagan, and I wear a whole lot of different hats. You may know me as the principal editor for ID Pro. If you've been around for a bit and are involved in standards, you may know me as I was the RFC series editor for 8 years. I also work with the R&E Federation community, a bunch of other organizations. Basically, if there's standards work going on, if there's work in digital identity at that kind of level, then I'm hopefully somewhere in the mix because I think it's just amazing. And relevant to today's discussion, I am also on the program committee and have been for 2 years for a conference called TNC. Used to stand for Terrain and Networking Conference, but as happens over time, the acronym just became the name. So there we have it. And that is the Research and Education conference based in Europe out of the National Research and Education Networks there, though it does bring a global audience. So being on the program committee for that has definitely given me a lot of insight as to what program committees are looking for, how they grade, how they respond to the proposals that they accept, how they respond to the proposals that they reject, that kind of thing. And I wanted to share that with you today. Lorrayne, tag, you're it.
I'm it. Hello, everyone. I'm Lorrayne Auld. I too wear quite a few hats in the digital identity space. I volunteer for WID. I also volunteer for Kantara and also help with the FIDO Alliance. And I'm here in my capacity as a member of the content committee for Identiverse, and I have been honored to have that role for the past few years. So I too will be eager to share with you some tips and tricks, as well as what I look when I review proposals. So we're very excited to be here and share with you what we have learned along the way, as well as see what you have for your proposals in the works. So next slide. So we pretty much went through this already in terms of what we're going to be talking about today. So let's go to the next slide and dive right in. So this slide was one that Andy Hindle briefed last week during the first webinar in this series, and I wanted to bring this back in to reiterate some of the key points that we as a content committee take a look at, as well as you who are working on a proposal to submit to a conference will keep in mind. One of the key things that you should do is do your homework first. What conference do you want to speak at? Take a look at what previous presenters have spoken about, as well as the types of topics that are presented at that conference. And then when you take a look at the submission information that is provided to each of the potential speakers, answer the questions that are asked. If they say, you know, provide 3 key points that you want in this proposal, make it 3, don't make it 10. Be really brief and to the point in your abstract. Many of them restrict the number of words to around 200, 250. Try to keep it to that limit and don't make it 3 pages. We, as the content committee, have lots and lots of proposals that we're looking through, and we just honestly do not have the time to read those 3 pages. So keep it brief, keep it attractive, and keep it to something that a potential attendee would want to see and listen to your session. What I have found successful also when I'm working on a proposal is have a colleague or a friend review your draft proposal, such as what you're doing today with us. They'll have another point of view and perspective of what you have in your content and may provide some good words of advice that can be used to make your message clearer, or perhaps a nicer way of presenting the material, as well as a really attractive, if you will, title. So I personally am really bad at titles, so I always go to about 3 or 4 of my colleagues who have better experience with putting together titles. So I find that that is a really handy thing to do. Be sure to submit your topic that you want to talk about to the correct one. For example, if you're talking about lessons learned, you don't want to submit it to like a standards track. You want to submit it to something that's a deployments or lessons learned, or something along that line. So make sure that what you submit is to the right track. Now, of course, if your topic might cover 3 or 4, pick the one that you think will be the best. And then we as the content committee may adjust or keep it in that one. I know firsthand that I received a couple of submissions that I thought would be better suited for a different track and vice versa. So there's definitely that to keep in mind. And also, lastly, if there's a specific theme for the conference, try to write to that theme to make it more appealing and attractive to those who are reviewing your submissions. So next slide. So having given some of the food for thought in terms of what to do and think of when you're submitting that proposal and writing it, let's go through some sample proposals that I wanted to share with you in terms of, some that are successful and those that were not so successful. So I think those are just equally as important. So what you see here is a proposal that was accepted. It is clearly written in terms of what the problem statement it is for this one, as well as what to expect in this session. The description of the proposal also nicely ties into the title, so it's supportive of what the title is conveying. And more importantly, not only does it have a good problem statement as well as what to expect, it also fits nicely into, let's say, a 25-minute session. So you have to think of that as well. If I have 25 minutes, that's typically 20 minutes of content and 5 minutes of Q&A. So when you're thinking through what type of session or proposal that you want to write about and talk about for that topic, is it enough for that amount of time, or is it too much? If it's too much, you need to focus it down, narrow it down to what you want to talk about. You don't want to talk about 20 different things, maybe you want to talk about 3. So keep that in mind as well as you're writing your proposal. And again, I think this one did that very well. Next slide. So this is another example of an approved session. This one is showing, actually this is more of a lessons learned. This is bringing experience to bear in terms of what has worked well for this specific use case. And it not only states what the problem was, as well as what they did, but it also gives the attendee what they're going to learn. So that, again, is a really nice way of conveying the information. It's a nice little bulleted list in terms of what learning practices you will have for this session. So again, that is a really nice description in terms of, we always hear about multi-factor authentication for this one, but here's something to apply something smarter, or risk-based authentication. And here are the tools and practices that we will learn. Next slide. So there's a nice little catchy little title, How to RBAC. So what does that mean? What is going to be in this session? So it's very clear, it's concise, it's much shorter than the other proposals that were accepted, but it's still really clear in terms of what to expect out of this. And as you see that this is applying the speaker's experience to a cloud-based environment using role-based access control. And what's really nice about this as well, and this is something that Identiverse states, is you cannot have vendor pitches. And this one is showing not only that, but platform neutral, meaning that I can apply these lessons learned to any cloud-based environment. So that's another really nice thing to convey. Next slide. So this is an approved panel proposal. So this topic in itself, open banking APIs, is pretty specialist, and so it could be dry as well. However, the abstract does a really good job in explaining the scale and the importance of this topic. And so you get a sense that in reading this, that this topic is giving an international perspective of it. It's not just the US, it's an international lessons learned, if you will, in terms of how to apply open banking APIs. What you might notice also is that this proposal probably was written by a non-native English speaker. One of the things that Identiverse is very proud of is the diversity of their speakers. And what I mean by diversity here is we like to have a combination of known speakers as well as new speakers, and that's something that was spoken about last week, as well as domestic and international speakers, as well as men and women. So we like to have a good mix of that. We do keep track of that information as part of filling out and submitting a proposal to Identiverse. There's always a question of, have you presented before? Where are you located? And so those types of metrics help us generate the agenda. So we have a nice mixture of both new and known faces and speakers, as well as domestic and international. So this is a great example of one that was actually comprised of international speakers on a panel. So this one, as I mentioned, it's good to have both a sense of what was approved and what wasn't. Now, this is an example of a declined session proposal. So the proposal isn't necessarily bad, it's just lacks a real sense of exactly where this session is going to take you. Not only that, it's actually, this one was submitted to Identiverse, and it really is off topic for Identiverse. So what could make this session more interesting is if you take this issue and then apply it directly to how you could use digital identity with this. Like, for example, if I have identity wallets, how would it be impacted in a post-quantum world? Or for this proposal was talking about threats that quantum hacking could be used for. So if you address those threats, then what are the mitigations? So that also could be something to twist this proposal to make it potentially more successful. So here's another declined proposal. And I know there's a lot of text here, and that's one of the reasons. It's very long, it's too long. I mentioned that a lot of these abstracts are between 200 and 250 words. As you see, this is much longer than that. Also, it's quite repetitive. The title is repeating itself throughout the write-up, and you're not quite sure where it's taking you. So it's very confusing. There's not a lot of thought into it. It looks like a lot of like copy and paste, if you will, from the title into these little random thoughts, to be blunt. So not much is conveyed in this proposal. So going back to Andy's points earlier on the previous slide is do your homework, be concise in your abstract and convey exactly what you want to talk about and what you're teaching. And essentially none of those key points are conveyed in this proposal. Now, if they tightened it up more and applied some of those in terms of that, then this essentially could be a more promising proposal. I'll go to the next slide. Heather, tag.
Aha, yes, I have thoughts. Okay, so Lorrayne walked us through a bunch of really good examples of what worked, what didn't. For me, the TLDR for all of that is many of you may be familiar with the concept of kindergarten, which is sort of the not quite preschool, but not like primary school for kids. And it's where you start learning the concept of when you're given a test, follow the instructions, read the whole thing through and follow the instructions. If you're lucky and you did that and you had a teacher like mine, that at the bottom, it says something like, you've actually read the instructions. You don't have to do 2/3 of the test. It's glorious when that happens if you follow the instructions. Rule number 1 of proposals: read through what they're asking you and then stick to that. Thing number 2 is you are selling your course or your basically your session. You are trying to convince the program committee, you're trying to convince potential attendees that this is something they want to do. They want to go. They want to be curious. And while you may know that this is an incredibly important topic, so of course they should want to be there to learn all about identity governance and administration. Maybe a little bit more selling could help you out a lot. A neat trick that I have used is to actually study copywriting, as in writing copy, like for advertisements, for websites, for that one sentence bling to get people to say, "Oh, now I'm curious. Now I'm interested." You might want to look into that as you're trying to get that the opening sentence that really just grabs people and brings them in. The next part is, okay, so you've read your instructions, you've figured out your sales pitch for people going to the session. Now you should know prior to submitting something to a conference what that conference culture is like. One of the sessions that was kind of declined because it didn't fit Identiverse, I bet that would have been a really good session for RSA. Similarly, I may have the same topic that I want to present to EIC and Identiverse, but I'm not going to have the same abstract and proposal for them because the culture and feel of those conferences are very, very different. And if you've never been to those conferences, so you're not really sure, that's where doing just a little bit of outreach to people who have presented, because trust me, they would love to actually have you ask them questions because it makes you feel good. Oh my gosh, someone actually saw that I presented there. I made a difference. Ask them, what's the conference like? You know, what is it? Is it formal? Is it informal? Are there a lot of hallway conversations? Is it more enterprisey type folks or government type folks or education type folks? Who goes to this thing? Because that's who you want to speak to. Okay, so you've done your reading in terms of instructions. You've figured out how to sell it. You've figured out the culture, but now you've got one more really big problem. And Veronica asked this in our Q&A, which is, all right, you've got all of this, but you haven't actually written the talk because maybe in the next 6 months, because call for papers often come out way early from actual when you're going to do the presenting. Who knows what's going to change between now and then? So do you want fresh content at the time of the conference, knowing that that might do weird things to your proposal? Or, you know, so you don't, as she says, overpromise if it changes along the way? This is really hard and it often gets people tripped up. However, you're not the only person to worry about that. The program committees know that this is a risk. So have your outline include a section that says something along the lines of this is the area where I'm going to give you the latest information, whatever that might be. I have this problem for one of the things that I tend to present on, which is how web browser changes as they try and improve upon privacy will be impacting things like federated identity. Okay, well, if I put that session in now, 6 months from now, goodness knows what's actually going to have happened. So it makes it a little bit challenging to write, absolutely, but I'm not going to try and write my presentation guessing where the world will be, because you're just going to have to rewrite it. So I would say you need to know what you want to talk about. You need to know the areas that are kind of at risk for significant change and just incorporate that into your proposal. Those are the biggest tips, tricks that I can think of off the top of my head. As you're going through this, as you're figuring out the culture, as you're asking people to give you feedback, all of the, you know, you can actually tell honest to goodness you can, a presentation proposal that has gone through, other people read it besides the person proposing it, there's a lot of P's in this. It does make a difference to have someone review what you've written and offer you feedback. And it shows if you know the target audience of who's actually going to be attending the conference. So those are all very good things to do. Lorrayne, should we see who's done homework and has something for us to review?
We could, but I just wanted to go through one more, and this really talks to what you just stated, Heather, in terms of knowing the conference, doing your homework, know who the attendees are, what the conference is really focused on, and writing to that. So what you see on the screen right now is a panel proposal that was declined to Authenticate. Now, Authenticate conference is the FIDO Alliance conference. And so this proposal was submitted to it. Now, while it could be something that's pretty interesting in general, like for RSA or a different type of conference, it wasn't really meeting the needs for the FIDO Alliance. Having said that, this individual did submit a proposal that was accepted to this conference. So, you know, there is that. So I just wanted to reiterate that you need to know who the audience is, what this conference is all about, and write to that. Also talk about themes. If there is a theme, write to that as well. So next slide. So as part of the decline of that previous one, there was some feedback that was given, which was applied to this rewrite. This panel proposal was accepted to Identiverse. So it took into consideration what was off, tweaked it a bit, and then one of the comments that was made last week was, if you have anything additional to state about this proposal, write about it if there's a field for it. So for this one, it just mentioned that this is a conversation that started the previous year. And so we wanted to continue having that conversation. So again, it's still talking about the same content, if you will, just changed up a bit in terms of what was declined to what was approved. So I just wanted to bring that in to say that feedback is really critical. So having a declined proposal isn't the end of the world. Use it, take that feedback, and shape it to something that would be a positive outcome. And with that, then I think we are ready to have a look at some proposals.
Oh,
Right.
goody. So I'm going to ask folks, or yeah, Debbie, do you want to manage this, or do you want me to manage it?
Nope, you totally can.
Okay. So now's a really good point. If anyone has a proposal that, I mean, at this point, there's only 5 of us. It's not scary. Okay, it's a little scary, but it shouldn't be too scary. Is there anyone who has a proposal that would like some feedback on it? If yes, raise your hand. And by raising hand, I mean the little Zoom feature at the bottom. It says raise hand. Ooh, I got a question. Allison has some topics to propose that we might toss around amongst us. Razia, can you unmute Allison, please? Actually, is it possible to unmute everybody? Because I do think this would be helpful to be more of an open conversation.
Just give me one moment. Just bear with me.
No worries. All right. Awesome. Allison, tell us what you're thinking.
Well, I have two proposals. Of course, after listening to your presentations, I wanted to make sure I specified I hadn't done my homework yet for exactly what Identiverse is looking for, or having run this by anybody else, in what format. But I do have two topics that I've been wanting to speak at some conferences on. One is specifically called Finding Support for Your Identity and Access Management Program in Uncommon Places. It talks a lot about how identity overlaps all areas of the company. And so I didn't know, how you wanted to kind of go through it and talk about it. But at a real high level, that's what, it goes through, and it talks about, how to build a strong program. So.
I love, so for one thing, I love the title. That immediately grabbed my attention as the uncommon places, the places where you wouldn't normally find that level of support. So if you wanted to describe this like in one sentence, how would you describe it?
In one sentence.
Yeah.
Other than the title.
Yep.
That it's not just about technology. Identity programs are not just about technology. It's about how you enable the business.
Good. I like it so far. Lorrayne, so this was for Identiverse, yes?
Yes.
I've actually proposed it at a couple of other conferences recently and had not been accepted, but I probably didn't do some of the things that you guys had suggested. So I definitely have my work cut out for me on my week off at the end of the month. But for Identiverse would make sense. So.
Cool.
So did you
Lorrayne?
receive any feedback regarding why it was not approved?
No, and I actually asked specifically, I sent them an email and I said, can I have some feedback on why? And I did not get any feedback. I had, for one conference, they gave me some small feedback and I incorporated that in before I submitted it for the women in the WISIS is the one that I recently submitted it for. And but I did not get any feedback on that one.
Yeah, because I also like where your thoughts are going with this proposal, because it's not something that's standard. Here are some things that are working so well that aren't the norm, if you will. And so that's like, oh, I'm going to learn something new, and maybe this is something I could apply myself in my environment. So I do like that. So for your proposal, it sounds like you already have like 3 key concepts you want to convey. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I don't know that I did a good job of describing it. And like I said, I obviously have to do some more homework to understand exactly what they're looking for, do a better job of making sure it's very clear and not over describing, things like that. But I would say that there probably are 3. Well, trying to think here. I'm not as prepared as I wanted to be this morning.
That's okay. This is a walkthrough to help, right? So
I mean, I actually have a rough presentation as well. I don't know if I could flip through it, but it's one that I had done at a small identity users group
Mhm.
here in Connecticut. And I thought I would make it more of a global type presentation, right? So
Mhm, mhm. So, yeah, so when you are working on that proposal, so it sounds like, you have your one sentence in terms of what it is. And so you craft how you want to convey your message in terms of what, as an attendee, I'm going to learn about. What am I going to hear? And what are the expectations for that particular session? I think that those elements will definitely help convey your message. And again, be succinct. So there's one of those decline proposals that we went through that spent most of it with the problem and very little with, well, what's going to happen? What am I going to get out of this session?
yeah,
And again, the abstract is so key because that's what's in the program agenda and that's what attendees will look at. So sounds like you're getting some, I mean, it's unfortunate you didn't get a lot of feedback back, but you did get some and you applied it. But you take a look at it. Now, have you attended Identiverse before?
long time ago. I did
Okay.
go to Identiverse once. So
Okay. So you have a sense and idea of what the attendees are in terms of their demographics and their
yeah, although
background.
it does tend to be very technical in nature. And what I'm trying to do is take them out of that technical thought process.
Mhm, mhm. That we have sessions that are not technical in nature. So we definitely have a mix there.
You know, one thing I would add to all of this is for an Identiverse session, you're probably going to have 25 minutes, including Q&A.
Mhm.
So it will be hard. You're going to have to leave some of it, elsewhere, but like pick the one big message you want, the one big solution, not two, not three, but pick one and focus on it.
I would also add for this one, as I'm listening to what you had shared, Allison, is at what stage are they building an identity program that they're going to need to get this particular support that you're suggesting? And is there a particular industry that you are focusing on that might help narrow down or make your proposal a little bit more relevant to the people who are coming or who are reading the proposal?
Okay. Yeah, in this case, actually, I don't think it should relate to a particular industry. It's much more general than that. And I also think if it's something that was not done early on in a program, it could be done at any point, right? So it's always easier at the beginning. I've had the
I wonder
opportunity to apply it mid or beginning, and it's much more successful at the beginning. So
I wonder if your selling point is you've been trying to get your IAM services access, what you're trying to get your company's IAM to be front and center, to be off the ground, to be fully supported so that you too can be a part of making your company grow. Here's how to find you've reached out to all the usual suspects. Here's how to think about doing more. And that frames it to your target audience are people who, work in a company that have an IAM program that they don't feel is sufficiently well resourced.
okay, that's helpful.
So I think we pulled apart one. Did you have another proposal you wanted to talk about?
Well, yeah, I don't want to take, if anybody else has anything before I jump into number 2.
Sure. Well, let's pause for a minute and say, and does anyone else have a proposal or an idea they'd like to talk about? Feel free to raise your hand or drop something in the Q&A. All right, Allison, you're our superstar.
Okay. Hey, this works for me. It's definitely not a waste of my morning. All right, so the other topic that I had was a journey to passwordless, a critical cyber initiative.
Oh, you're going to struggle on that one a little bit because everybody wants to talk about passwordless and
Yes.
passkeys and, you know, what differentiates this talk from the 100 other talks that are going to be submitted on this?
Well, again, my focus, other than, you know, at a high level, suggesting that they use a FIDO2 compliant MFA that's, you know, not phishable, but also talking about challenges you may encounter. So this one focuses a lot in the manufacturing industry, right? And the kind of challenges that we've run into and why it's important to identify early on what those challenges are so that you can work through them. You know, this one, it's not as fully baked, right?
Mm-hmm.
I did a version of this at a vendor specific conference, right? A passwordless summit that was, you know, it was a particular vendor that was driving it, although there were a lot of FIDO2 folks there. And they were sponsoring it as well. But it, you know, one of the things that I've been learning in this passwordless journey is a lot of people just can't, that they're so fixated on some of the just the standard stuff, but they don't think about the different persona that they have in their population and some of the challenges they can run into.
So maybe something like passwordless isn't just for high tech. Let's talk about manufacturing.
Yes,
I would
because
wordsmith that a bunch, but
right,
yeah, Lorrayne,
right, right, because I actually wrote that down in terms of the manufacturing industry. I'm unaware of any sessions that talk about their passwordless journey in that environment. So I have a feeling that there are certain standards and requirements that may differ for that industry than others. So that might
yeah,
be
it's very
something
different.
interesting. Right. So that could be quite interesting. But you'll, again, going back to that one panel description where it's very specialized, you need to convey very clearly what the message is that you're trying to make. Because I sense that some of those regulations, while they differ, they may actually be similar to other environments as well. So think that through in terms of how you want to convey that message and why it's so important to the manufacturing industry and how it may potentially apply to others.
Yeah, and I guess I wasn't trying to get across that going passwordless is important to the manufacturing industry. I think it's just as important across the board, right?
Right.
But the challenges you run into are different.
Right. For deploying it, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, there are the points that you need to cover to make this different from all the other ones out there. We don't have enough information on what's happening in the manufacturing industry or what the requirements are, or you know, what even the considerations are. In fact, there's so much we don't know that I think your bigger challenge is narrowing it down to pick something to focus on in your 25-minute session, because there's a lot to unpack here.
Right. I mean, just talking through the challenges in your environment and the regulations, I think, are pieces that should be conveyed, but in a 25-minute session, that makes it tough to convey that, as well as how this helps too, if that's the path you choose to take.
Definitely don't give up on the idea. It's it's got legs in it. We just have to push them out.
Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely at a point in my career where I really want to get out there and start speaking. This is, it's my goal for the year. So, and I appreciate the help and the guidance. This was very timely for me, so.
Awesome. I'm glad we could help. All right. Do we have any other questions or folks that want to raise any thoughts or feedback or responses before we wrap up? Go ahead, Dipti.
I have one quick question. I mean, this is like first time probably I'm trying to give it a try to write some abstract, and which is starting at a point where I'm trying to think of a topic. I'm an engineer, so I'm like mostly into engineering side of the story. I mean, are there any guidelines? How should I challenge myself to come up with right topic? Because I'm at a very early stage and just trying to get a hang of it. I have attended a couple of conferences. I have attended Identiverse once, I think No once, and I have been there at IIW once. So I kind of have a feel of what topics go around, but anything specific I should introspect about what I know and what I should talk about, anything I should question myself, any guidelines if you have, that would be helpful.
So you mentioned that you're an engineer, and so can you provide us a little bit of background regarding what you're working in, for what field of identity?
So I was working with SiteMinder before. So I was developer there for their products like secure proxy server and their web agents. So back then, probably implementing the protocols of OpenID and OAuth to support those flows. Now I work with Okta, and currently I mean, back then I was more of a backend side. Now I'm more of towards client side, working mostly with Apple ecosystem. The Okta Verify, Authenticate Wrap for macOS, and so that kind of development, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. It does. So you actually have hands-on experience with these products. And so I'm sure that there's some gotchas, lessons learned, that you could apply using these tools, right?
Okay, but I mean, yeah, usually these conferences are more about not vendor specific or product specific.
Right. Right, but I think you could talk in general terms, in terms of here's some either lessons learned that I've had on my journey using various IAM tools. Here's some gotchas. I don't see you, maybe I'm wrong, speaking from a standards perspective. Or adherence to the standards. I don't see that, but I also hear possibly federated access. So
I'd probably approach it a little differently.
Okay.
And that's what, but I mean, Lorrayne is absolutely spot on with her suggestions. This is literally just how different people think differently. If I'm struggling for, I know I want to say something. I know I want to speak. I know I want to be there and be a part of it. Step one is go to the call for papers and say, okay, what topics are they looking for? And in looking at those topics, I say, okay, is there anything in this kind of area that just annoys the ever-loving heck out of me? Is there anything that if I were queen of the universe, I would want to be different? And because sometimes that frustration gives you enough energy to write a passionate proposal. And that can help a lot in moving that forward, in giving you something like, you know what, I can sink my teeth into this. I can make a difference on this topic because this has been driving me crazy.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I kind of tried to do that, but yeah, I mean, not to the depth you spoke. I just went through the conferences, call for paper descriptions and all that. And I mean, at the first glance, it really looked like, oh, this is not for engineers. I mean, but yeah, probably I should think through it and come up with something. That's a good suggestion. Both of you, thank you so much. I mean, I will try to think around both the aspects, and maybe see you guys soon again with some ideas.
We'd love
And
to
also,
hear 'em.
you mentioned that you've attended IIW in the past. And so that format is much more open, and it doesn't hurt to raise some of these topics that you're passionate about and talking to help determine what path you want to take.
Yes, I'm planning to attend IW this year. When I attended back then, I had no thoughts that even I want to present. So I was just grasping in whatever discussions were going on. But I know, I mean, I'm definitely planning to go to IW because I really like that unconference format. Yeah. So that's in my mind, that I think I should give that as a first attempt to learn more about the thoughts. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
Fantastic. So Women in Identity does have a platform that includes a forum. I strongly encourage you, if you haven't actually gone to the website recently, to go ahead and do so. I'm assuming you're probably all Women in Identity members, because it's free to join. But if you drop into the forums, it's a great place to continue the conversation and discuss, here's your idea, here's what the proposal looks like, and get feedback that way. So I know that I keep an eye out on that space in case anything comes in. So I encourage you to go ahead and use that, because that's what the platform's for. With that, I think we can wrap up. Thank you all. Lorrayne, do you have any final closing words?
Other than, keep trying, start continuing that conversation with your peers, and we look forward to seeing some of your proposals.
Thank you, everybody who joined. As mentioned, this will also be available on our YouTube, just in case you want to revisit it. And until next time, have a great day, and we'll see you all soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good one.